You know, the last thing I want on this channel is to sound like a broken record, trust me, and try my best. But man, every week I watch a Cup race nowadays, it's the same song, different verse. Be it on a road course, short track, super speedway, and now intermediate, it doesn't matter. It's come to a point where I'm not expecting anything positive to come out of Cup races. And heading into this Texas Cup race, that's how my mindset was. Practice was not encouraging, and neither was qualifying. According to Joey Logano, it took his teammate Ryan Blaney 8 laps to pass someone on track, even though Blaney was 0.3 seconds faster than the car in front of him. And considering Blaney is the only guy, or one of the only guys that has completely figured out how to make passes with this Gen 7 car, that's saying a lot, the fact that he's struggling to make passes here at Texas. There was no headline that was even remotely positive heading into this race, other than Carson Hocevar's first career pole to make it back-to-back weeks we've had first-time pole sitters, as Saint Smith sat on the pole at Talladega last week. But that was it. That was the only headline that I consider was worth mentioning as a positive. And as the opening laps got underway, things looked to be heading that way. Only a select few guys were able to make passes on these long green flag runs. Obviously, Blaney was among that exclusive group, as was Logano himself, and also Tyler Reddick. Like towards the end of stage 1, he charged from 9th all the way up to 2nd, and he would have taken the stage win away from Cindric if Denny Hamlin didn't blow up with 5 to go in the stage. Hamlin was also another one of those guys who was making up some ground in traffic at a decent rate too, after some miscommunication with his crew chief during his first pit stop set him back. But even then, most of the action was limited to mid-pack. Up front, it was just a follow the leader type of affair. You would very rarely see passing up front unless it was at the tail end of a very long green flag run, like we're talking about 40 to 50 laps. And even then, the leaders had to be on a different tire strategy for passing to even be a thing. I mentioned Reddick's charging late in stage 1, yes, and that was made possible largely because most of the front runners were on 2 tires. Now, once we got to that point, the race became decently watchable, especially in stage 3 when the running order shuffled quite a bit before green flag stops. But make no mistake, there was very little passing overall outside of attrition and pit stops. The Gen 7 has been bad on every single track type this year, but especially at an intermediate track like Texas, and intermediates were supposed to be the lone saving grace of this generation of car, and even then, the quality of the racing has declined over the years. Like, look at 2022, the racing was great, especially in the first half of the season. Then in 2023, there was a dip in quality, not as good, but still decent. 2024, however, that's where you started to really notice the decline, and it's seemingly gotten worse ever since. It's come to a point now where races are decided on pit road. If you win the race off pit road, you were on cruise control. All you had to do was not make a mistake, get loose, or wash up the track, and you were golden. Unfortunately though, some guys were not as lucky. Josh Berry, who looked pretty good early on and was well in line for a top 5 and potential stage 2 victory, he spun out in turn 4 and hit the wall hard on the rear end. Chris Buescher, he didn't wreck, but he had a flat tire towards the end of stage 2 while running 3rd, and for some inexplicable reason, NASCAR just let the debris stay there laying around on the track for a good 5 to 10 seconds before throwing the yellow. Like, well, what's up with that? Bubba Wallace, this was shaping up to be another good day for him until the stage 3 restart, when some close quarters racing with Logano caused Bubba to bounce off the wall in turn 2 and wreck, collecting a couple of other guys like Allmendinger, Bowman, and Noah Gragson. Also, Kyle Busch, after a caution during green flag pit stops that shuffled the field, he finally had the track position to compete for the win, as he had made his way up to 3rd when he went over the bumps in turn 4, lost the car, and crashed in a very similar fashion to Josh Berry's wreck from earlier. It also didn't help that the booth were just commentating how good of a day he was having right before he wrecked, so great going there. Just yet another case of the commentator's curse. And on the ensuing restart, Carson Hocevar got tight in turn 2, washed up the track, and collected Ryan Preece, wrecking both of them out. And then on the restart after that, the third RFK Racing domino falls once again as Keselowski spun out and triggered yet another multi-car wreck that took him out of the race, just adding to his already abysmal season. And those were just half the cautions we had, as there were 12 yellows in total for this race, and most of those were caused by the track itself. It's far too difficult to drive around this track, and not in a good way. This is not a Darlington or Rockingham type situation where the track is tough to drive, but you can still make it work. Oh no. In Texas, there's only one, maybe 1.5 lanes at best on this track, and that's the bottom lane. Even after NASCAR stopped adding PJ1 to the racing surface, if you wash up in turns 1 and 2, you're bound to hit the wall. And likewise, if you wash up in turns 3 and 4, you're bound to go over the bumps and more than likely spin out. And don't even get me started on what happens when a car comes close to even a smidge of dirty air. It just snaps right out of the driver's control, leading to either a spin or an overcorrection that causes them to hit the outside wall. And we saw this happen a couple times throughout the race, most notably in the closing laps with Michael McDowell. He was in position to snooker a win away from the field after an improbable restart a handful of laps ago saw him take the top spot away from Larson. And Larson looked unbeatable ever since taking the lead away from after Josh Berry wrecked, and he went on to win stage 2, and even after the caution that shuffled the running order, he was still leading. So it was a real surprise that Larson just lost the lead from McDowell, or McDowell had the great restart that he had to get by Larson. But unfortunately, the Penske teammates of Logano and Blaney ran him down, and Logano got to him with 3 to go, and despite McDowell blocking him way down to the apron on the backstretch, Logano kept his foot in it and cleared the 71 in turns 3 and 4 in one of the more impressive moves I have ever seen someone make with this generation of car, by the way. Of course, McDowell's failed attempt at a block caused him to also lose second to Blaney, and when the 12 moved in front of him to clear him in 1 and 2, boom! The car snaps on him due to the dirty air from the 12. 71 hits the outside wall hard and crashes out. Now this caused the race to go into overtime, and while Chastain tried his best to steal the win away from Penske, the most he could do was split the 22 and 12 with a second place finish. It was a foregone conclusion that Penske car was going to win. The only question was if it was going to be Logano or Blaney, and obviously it's Logano, wins yet another war of attrition. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first win for AAA as a primary sponsor, because I don't think I've recalled Joy or anyone else winning with those colors. So if that's the case, then that's pretty cool too. And because of that, and also the pass that he made on McDowell, I'm just gonna go ahead and give him driver of the day, because not only did he give a longtime sponsor in the sport their first ever win, but he also rebounds from his Talladega DQ and the controversy with Cindric during the race with a win. And he checked off all of the boxes too. He's back in the playoffs with a win. This is also his first top 5. Just took him 11 races. Better late than never for your defending champion, I suppose. And now, of course, people are not happy, and not just because of the race. That's understandable. But more so because Logano backed into another win or just got lucky again. Yada, yada, yada. Again, understandable. Logano has a habit of coming out on top on this type of attrition races time and time again. So if you're not a fan of the guy, then I kind of understand it, that it could be pretty frustrating to watch the same guy, that, especially if it's a guy that you don't like, just coming through time and time again in this type of chaos filled races. But honestly, when I think about this particular race, I have to disagree. I'm sorry. And Denny Hamlin, he said it best on his podcast. Logano started deep in the field. Believe he qualified around 27th. And he was part of that select group of guys that could make passes under green even in the short run. I mentioned earlier, it was him, Ryan Blaney, and Tyler Reddick. Also Denny Hamlin himself before his engine blew. He was looking pretty fast early on. He had good restarts. He stayed out of trouble for the most part. Of course, he had that incident with Bubba Wallace, but outside of that, he ran a pretty clean, mistake-free race. And of course, the pass that he made on McDowell was absolutely badass. Even when McDowell was blocking him all the way down to the apron, Logano just kept his foot in it, and he also managed to make it stick. I really thought he was gonna wash up into turns 3 and 4, and he will be the one crashing, not McDowell. So I would argue he did not back into that one. He 100% earned this win. And for the people in the back still complaining he only has one top 10 and having the worst startup for a defending champion, and now how that doesn't matter anymore because he is locked in. Bro, he was sitting top 10 in points before he won Texas. Yeah, only one top 10, but he's led a ton of laps and scored a bunch of stage points. His problem is not speed like it was last year. It's actually finishing races. And he finally did on this past Sunday. So yeah, this is an earned win in my book. Now, I still don't understand why NASCAR decided to reconfigure this track back in 2017. Again, the repave was fine, the surface was getting old, but why reduce the banking in 1 and 2? I never got the logic behind that. Now, granted, as crazy as I may sound, this race wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It wasn't good. I never said it was. But it could have been much worse, okay? Hear me out. Well, the first 2 stages were a slog to get through. Once we got to stage 3 and we had that long run before green flag pit stops and the like, we actually saw quite a good bit of passing that made this race go from borderline unwatchable to just barely decent. And because of that, I'm giving this race a C. Not stellar by any measure, but especially for Texas standards, this turned out to be a decent race. You have to admit, at least it was better than last year's edition. But hey, if it serves any consolation, we're not going to Kansas, an intermediate track that actually produces great racing and has delivered some great moments with this Gen 7 car. That's definitely a race worth looking forward to, which is something I haven't been able to say about any Cup race since Homestead back in late March, so I guess I'll see you guys at Kansas.